Did you know that? You can watch all fighting and boxing pay-per-view at no extra cost. On FluxVIX.com, you can access to 1,000 live channels plus the latest movies and series at a fraction of the cost of regular services. For more information, go to FluxVIX.com or scan the QR code on the screen.
Today, the UFC announced a bunch of fights for later this summer in August, starting with Tatsuro Taira versus Amir Albazi in the main event of a UFC APEX card on August 2nd. I like Taira's odds in this fight, considering he's coming off a split decision loss against Brandon Royval in a fight a lot of people thought he won, and Amir Albazi is coming off a pretty hard loss against Brandon Moreno, where his face got broken and he got pretty beat handily by Brandon Moreno. Taira's a lot younger and seems to be a bit more technical, in my opinion, on the ground and on the feet. I'd give the power advantage to Albazi, but I'm not sure how much that's going to matter against Taira's grappling. And then they also just announced Patricio Pitbull's next fight is going to be against Dan Ige at UFC 318 on July 19th. I'm glad Pitbull isn't taking too long to fight for a second time in the UFC, considering he's on the older side and he doesn't have a ton of time left to compete. But I think Dan Ige's in his prime right now and is probably going to KO Pitbull. But at least the UFC is feeding Pitbull to someone who has an entertaining, no bullshit fighter who we all know will fight anybody, anywhere, even on 4 hours notice like he did with Diego Lopez. I'm glad Pitbull got matched up with a striker too. He's got a chance against Ige, but I just think Ige is going to be bigger. He's going to have the power and the speed advantage, and honestly, even a technique advantage in there too. I got to side with Ige getting the finish in this one, dude. Rodolfo Vieira versus Tresean Gore got announced as well. That should be a good fight, and I think either of them could win that one. I'd probably lean towards Rodolfo, considering he's got way more experience in the octagon, and this will be Tresean Gore's biggest test, and he's coming off a brutal beating against one of the sickest fights I've seen by Marco Tulio, which definitely deserved fight of the night, but it didn't get it. I remember that fight like it was yesterday, and man, I was so hyped up during that one. It was so sick. I love seeing Gore's fighting back against Tulio, but he just didn't have the skills that Tulio had, and I think Rodolfo probably takes this one, but you never know with him. Sometimes he gasses the hell out pretty quickly.
Did you know that? You can watch all fighting and boxing pay-per-view at no extra cost. On FluxVIX.com, you can access to 1,000 live channels plus the latest movies and series at a fraction of the cost of regular services. For more information, go to FluxVIX.com or scan the QR code on the screen.
And Gore has improved a lot and is going to try his ass off and not give up. Now, this one isn't confirmed, but there are rumors of Michal Oleksiejczuk fighting Nursultan Ruziboyev in Chicago on the Dricus vs. Hamzat UFC 319 card. I love this matchup. It's striker versus striker, and I'm always down for an Oleksiejczuk fight. I think he's one of the most entertaining fighters in the welterweight and middleweight divisions in the UFC. Ruziboyev is obviously huge, being like 6'5" or 6'6", but Oleksiejczuk has bricks in his hands. He's a nasty southpaw, and we've seen Ruziboyev get hurt by a smaller, more powerful fighter who's also a southpaw like Buckley. So I'd probably lean towards Oleksiejczuk, but I'm biased as hell, honestly. Now for the people's main event, everybody's newest favorite fighter, Azamat Bekoev versus everybody's newest least favorite and most hated fighter, Torrez Finney. I think the UFC saw Finney's last fight and how fucking boring it was, and just a complete lay and pray snooze fest, and said, yeah, screw it, let's throw him in with the Wolves, and gave him a super hard matchup in Azamat Bekoev, which I can't wait for. Tatsuro Taira and Albazi is the main event, or is this the real main event? They could definitely put this as the co-main, and I think Bekoev is probably going to slump Finney and will definitely be able to deal with his wrestling. It wouldn't surprise me if he had him sleeping in the first round. Bekoev posted over and over on Twitter saying how much he wanted this fight against Torrez Finney, was constantly tagging him in the UFC, and thankfully the UFC followed up with it and made it, which I'm pretty happy about. I'm glad that they listened to the fans and to Azamat. Azamat's been growing his fan base a ton ever since his knockout a few weeks ago over Ryan Loder, so I know he's going to have a ton of fans behind him begging for him to flatline Torrez Finney and save us from another long-ass Torrez Finney performance. Bekoev also said his dream arena to fight in is the UFC APEX early prelims, which is fucking hilarious. If you don't already follow Bekoev on Twitter, make sure to do so. He's hilarious. He's already 2 for 2 with sick knockouts in the UFC, and he's posting power slap edits of him and Finney, and he's trolling Joe Pyfer, getting almost 7,000 likes. Some guy said Finney's going to drown Bekoev, but watching his past fights before the UFC, I don't really think he's going to do that, and maybe I'm just praying that he knocks out Torrez Finney and saves us all, and all the time of ours that he's already wasted laying and praying on the Contender Series 3 times and then doing it in the UFC. I think he's one of the most boring fighters possible, honestly. I can't wait for this fight. It's definitely the one I'm looking forward to the most out of the fights that were announced today. I'm replying to all comments below. Thanks for watching, boys. See you later.
Did you know that? You can watch all fighting and boxing pay-per-view at no extra cost. On FluxVIX.com, you can and access to 1,000 live channels plus the last list. Movies and series at a fraction of the cost of regular services. For more information, go to FluxVIX.com or scan the QR code on the screen.